Hello, friends. I'm Joe Lynch, the host of the Logistics of Logistics podcast, but today I am in Las Vegas. I'm at the Trimble conference, and today's topic is the transformative power of mapping with my friend Rishi Mehra. Did I pronounce that name?
You got that right, Joe.
Excellent, excellent. So, Rishi, please introduce yourself and your company and where you're normally located. You're in Vegas today.
Yes, the fun Sin City out here, but home base is back in New Jersey. I've been there for over 26 years now. Based out of the Princeton office for Trimble. I run all of Trimble's mapping business, all of the responsibility around that. And in addition to creating the connected ecosystem for our carriers in the North American market, connecting all the pieces that Trimble has. So Trimble's organized, as you're aware, with different segments, the transportation segment, the construction segment. Within the transportation segment is where we have our mobility business, enterprise business, maps, and Transporion. And that's where I fit in the maps responsibilities.
Yeah. So we'll get more into the specifics of maps, but first talk a little bit about what are we doing here? What is the Trimble Insight Conference?
Well, it's an exciting place for anyone who's working in the North American transportation space to be present at. People mistake it for a user conference for Trimble Solutions. It is not what that is. Insight is our event to connect all the different players in the market to offer the different participants in the transportation ecosystem the choice and the connections to pick the right solutions to help them out, be more efficient, be more profitable. That is the theme. The conference out here is to see what Trimble has to offer from connecting all the pieces in the ecosystem to help the carriers, the drivers. That is the theme of the conference, how technology meets the road. It's a nice play on rubber meets the road for them, but we want our technology that we provide to the people who are moving the freight to help them out.
Yep. And this has been a learning experience for me, definitely. So I've been to a number of logistics conferences, and a lot of times there's a lot of freight brokers. There's freight brokers here too. But what's interesting here, you have a lot of carriers, a lot of shippers, and all of the technology that goes in the truck. And when I was talking to the people before I came to here, I started to realize this is all the partners. So all your partners are here. So Trimble partners with, I don't know, you tell me how many people, but it's got to be dozens and dozens of companies are kind of connected, I'll call them the Trimble ecosystem. But then in addition, you cooperate with a lot of your competitors. So a lot of people I've talked to at this conference say, well, we partner with Trimble here, and here, and we kind of compete over here. So I thought, well, but I think that's also the nature of all technology. Am I right to say that?
I think that's a very good representation of where Trimble is. There might be different industries where you might not see competitors working together. We have taken a very different stance under our leadership, and our vision is to build a connected ecosystem and to know that we cannot offer everything in that connected ecosystem. So it's important for us to connect the data elements, to connect everything through our cloud, to give our participants in this ecosystem, the carriers, the shippers, the choice to pick what is the best of the breed solution. So the number of integrations and the partners that we have are huge. We do not keep away competitors from this marketplace from coming to our conference, exhibiting. We want to have the best of breed solutions, but we want to have the best of breed integrations for everyone to benefit from.
Yeah, and I think somebody said yesterday, Anthony Satarja from Parade, one of your partners, said to me that they're using a lot of AI now in their solution. And he said, Joe, we absolutely need data. And he says, if you're not connected to all of the systems out there, you don't have it. And there's a big difference between our old-fashioned connected and what we expect today. If you say, yeah, I'm connected, but it took me 10 weeks and $100,000 to connect, no, I'm not going to connect everything. That's not what we're talking about here.
No, we're not. Just think of a scenario, Joe. You walk into your car, you walk into the truck, depending on whether you're an Apple believer or an Android believer, your phone's connected to your vehicle. You walk in, you don't have to go through clicking 100 different buttons to make it work. That's what Trimble's about. That's what we have announced the partnership with Parade. The integrations that we do with the partners who are bringing in the power of AI to benefit, provide efficiency to our carriers is through these integrations. Our integration strategy is to identify what our user base, what the industry wants, and give those connections so the data which resides in our TMSs is available as a digital twin in the cloud and connected to these other partners to offer more value to our customers.
Yep. Well, I appreciate that you are tolerant of people with Androids. Just because we believe differently doesn't mean we can't all get along.
Now, the green bubble's going to be gone soon.
And we'll be accepted. So, yesterday when I was talking to Rob Painter, he mentioned 4 chunks of Trimble's business. And you just kind of alluded to it. So the first was mobility. What do you guys mean by mobility? What does that all entail?
So I would, instead of starting off from mobility, give you a different perspective on how Trimble views these chunks, and I'll cover mobility aspect in it. You have freight originating from the shippers, the customers,
Yep.
who want to move the freight. Transporion platform out there offers the best connectivity. Trimble has that as one of the divisions. The freight comes into a carrier. The TMS, which is our enterprise business, the carrier has to run their operations on managing the freight, but also managing the assets.
That's the backbone of their business.
Backbone of their business. So we have the asset management business as well as the freight solutions inside our TMS and our TMT fleet maintenance offerings inside enterprise. The fleets need to execute. The movement of that execution, the execution of the freight, moving it from point A to point B, happens inside the cab, where the driver resides, their technology that we offer to them, the regulatory compliances that they have to go through, the inspections that they need to perform. All of that encompasses inside what we term as the mobility system. It is tracking the live GPS positions. It is incorporating the video offerings from our solution to make the driver safer on the road. It is providing the drivers the right tools to take the HOS breaks, keeping them compliant to the FMCSA as well as the Canadian regulations out there. So mobility encompasses a lot out there, but just to give you a life cycle, that's how the 3 Trimble divisions are there. More importantly, there's the maps piece, which underlies all of these. And that is what the power is. We have a common platform on which all our different other businesses are also building upon.
Yeah, it's interesting because you're the first one to explain it that way. This is almost, it's called a life cycle. It's a workflow for freight. And a lot of people who haven't heard about Transporion, you guys made that acquisition, last year?
Yes.
And is that a European company that is now, I know it's an American company now, but is their base of operations was Europe, and is it expanding into the U.S. now?
We're in a global economy right now, but if I was to answer that question, yes, Transporion is and are still, the division headquarters is based out of Europe, but the solutions, the platform that they're built on is available and applicable both to the European market and the North American market.
You probably wouldn't have bought it if you couldn't see the value of it going.
That is the power of connecting the Transporion platform to the rest of the Trimble ecosystem and scaling. If you hear Rob speak about it, our connect and scale strategy, that is what we mean by it, connecting all the pieces, bringing that connection to all the different geographies as well.
Yeah, so speaking of Rob, that's the CEO over at Trimble. Yesterday, I went to a media roundtable, and he talked about, over time, I think 20 years, Trimble has acquired 100 companies. And we all have read in the Wall Street Journal or business magazines about acquisitions going haywire. And I keep thinking, well, these didn't go haywire. Otherwise, you don't keep doing it. You guys have a culture and the ability to constantly buy and integrate. And he also mentioned, we also have some businesses we divested of because we thought there was a better owner for that business. And I thought, yeah, that's incredible because it's also necessary for what we're talking about here. Somebody has to join all of these armies together. And Trimble's doing it.
Yes, and those acquisitions have helped us scale our business to where we are. Definitely speaks very well of the culture. That's where we have employees who celebrate 30 years, 40-year anniversaries. I myself have been a part of the Trimble family for 10 years, and I still believe in the culture, and that's what a lot of the acquisitions that we make, the biggest point of discussion is how's the culture at Trimble?
Yeah.
And are we a fit inside the Trimble culture, and how does our technology fit in?
Yeah. So you guys had a big announcement just before we all got here. I think on Sunday before I got here Sunday. So I read it before I left. I was like, oh, I know we're going to be talking about this. Talk about that new deal you guys have.
Well, I'm sure Rob covered it very well with you and Jack as well. We're in the period where we announced the deal. It'll take its time to close, but we're excited about it. The three main tenets of why Trimble made this deal what it did. It's around the breadth, it's around keeping our focus, and it's about offering choice.
Yep.
And those are the key things. There's the breadth of solutions that our customers can have, the expansion of the solutions in the marketplace, what Platform Science has, the breadth of the customers that we can reach to, the OEM connections that Platform Science brings to this ecosystem. Those are the huge things. And it gets us the focus to deliver what our promise is to the industry.
Yeah, and this is Jack Kennedy, the co-founder, CEO over at Platform Science. When I interviewed him and Rob yesterday, and he corrected me a few times. But again, I always say, push me into the shallow end, because I can't swim with the tech. I said ELD, and he said, well, that's not a good description of what we're doing anymore. And I said telematics, and he said that's not exactly the right description of what we're doing. But we've seen all of the technology in cab, including the mapping, which we'll get to, it started off as kind of a single feature or a few features, and now it is kind of that whole experience for the driver. And what we're trying to do is make the driver's life easier, and obviously we want to make the carrier's life and the carrier owner's life better also.
Yeah, you hit it right in the point. It is what Jack is referring to is the connected vehicle. It's the connected experience, and that is super important. As we spoke about the freight life cycle, the driver is the key central piece. The amount of time they spend hauling freight, moving it from point A to point B, it starts out there. And that is the focus of the solution. That's where Jack and Platform Science are coming from, not thinking of it as a ELD. ELD needs to happen. The logging device needs to happen. The telematics feeds need to flow in. Those are things which we don't worry about. You walk in, get into your car, you turn it on. It has to turn on. It has to drive. Otherwise, there's problems.
Yes.
But it's more about hauling it. It's about the driver driving things.
Yeah, but it's funny because you could say, oh, we created a proof of delivery tool. And you go, oh, that's cool, very needed. But if it's standing alone, it's not that useful to me. Or you say, hey, we got a tool that just measures detention. Yeah, that's really good. I need that. It'll save us money if we use it. But we know that from our own use of technology, our computers and our phones, what it's capable of doing, we don't use all the apps. We don't use things that are not connected. By the way, I use a CRM. My CRM isn't really, it's connected to my Outlook, but it's not perfect. And so I have to move from one system to another. And sometimes there's stuff lost. For drivers, they don't get paid to move around from system to system. They don't get paid to enter data into systems. They're also doing it sometimes in a truck cab in the middle of the night. So we have to minimize the typing and the data entry and all the extra hassle that they have.
That is a very true fact. And if you look at when people used to complain about driver shortages, and then they started complaining about drivers' time on the road, the duty hours, they don't have enough time because now it's electronically logged. We don't think about how to make the driver's life easier. We don't think about what is the driver supposed to be focused on. We focus on they need to do these additional tasks which are not core to delivering freight. Delivering freight, driving, we want our drivers to be focused on the road, to be safe, to deliver the freight in a timely manner. All other tasks should happen. If the data is connected between the different ecosystem, and that's where Trimble fits in with its cloud strategy, is the data exchange between the enterprise TMS system to the dispatch into the mobile comm to capture the hours of service, make intelligent decisions, and tell the driver yes or no. That is where we are headed.
Right. It's interesting. This morning at breakfast, I had a conversation with some gentlemen, and we were talking about this business. And I talked to a lot of different people in this space who started off as, we had some trucks, and then we opened a brokerage. And then somewhere along the line, they close the carrier and they stay with the brokerage. And it's an easier business. It's in many ways a better business. But the whole foundation of not only our business, but our way of life is trucking. And it is not it's not easy to own a carrier, to be profitable. It's also really hard to recruit good drivers and keep them. We train tons of drivers. There is no driver shortage. We train tons of drivers. They leave. Look, if you're willing to drive a truck 11 hours a day, you're willing to work hard. And we're losing them to warehouses. We're losing them to construction. They're hard workers. If you're a hard worker in this economy, you will have a job. And you don't have to have a job that doesn't treat you well.
Yes, and there are carriers who do not face driver retention problem. I think they have adopted the right tools, whether it's from Trimble or from partners of ours, to give the driver safe tools to help them move from point A to point B, to give them the efficiency tools to help them make sure they find the right parking. A driver on the road, there are drivers who might want to come back home every night. Our optimization algorithms help provide that. There are drivers who are driving and are okay to do those cross countries. Help them find the parking so that they have a safe parking space where they can go and take showers. Building the mapping content around it so that those couldn't be incorporated into the solutions for the drivers is very important. And that's what we believe in, keeping the focus on the person who's moving the freight while optimizing the back office operations as well.
Yep. So today's topic is the transformative power of mapping, and I know you're in charge of the mapping division. And before we hit record, I mentioned to you that I always heard digital twin, and it started coming up a lot during COVID. And I asked somebody maybe 6 months ago, I said something about, show me digital twin in my life. And they said something like Google Maps. Now, I obviously am not using Trimble as a consumer. And I said, well, how is that Google Maps? And he says, because Google Maps Waze the same thing. As I'm driving in my car, I see there's a traffic jam, and I avoid it. 10 years ago, I wouldn't have done that. I would have just said, oh, damn, I wish I knew there was a traffic jam. Now I do. So that, as a consumer, it's an inconvenience for me to be a half hour late to go see my mother. For a driver, suddenly finding yourself in a traffic jam that then leads you to being stuck in Toronto or Chicago at rush hour, that means I'm 2 or 3 hours late, means I'm docked pay, it means I miss my next pickup, it means a factory might close. It's disastrous. So they need a mapping solution that is actually going to prevent them from having those kind of problems.
So that's where the Maps division's focus is. You touched on all the points that are important to the driver and then highlight how we are bringing that power into the hands of the driver to help them with important, intelligent decisions made for them, giving them the choice. Our mapping network, we talk about digital twin as the map network. What is the physical map on the ground versus what is happening in Google or in the Trimble Maps ecosystem. Trimble has been doing that with its field systems and geospatial technology for a while. But when we talk about a digital twin, it is tracking not just the map network, but everything else that happens around it, creating that exact move. The driver's going from New York to Chicago or in transit, which takes them through Chicago. We have the full details of the route, which is generated by our PC Miler routing algorithms, which takes into consideration the dimensions of the vehicle, the load that they're hauling. What ended up happening, for example, just digressing for a second, how critical mapping technology is when the Key Bridge went down in Baltimore. Very unfortunate incident.
Yep.
We have customers who were positioned where their warehouses were on the north side of the bridge and their customers were on the other side. They would haul the freight, and it was hazmat freight, straight over the bridge. That is the only bridge allowed in Baltimore to go down. The length of haul that increased for them, the mapping data available to say, this is the extra cost that you're going to incur now. And not just the cost, from a time perspective, you touched on driver's time. That is important. So that's all the effort we put into the mapping data to create safety passage based on the load, to provide a safe environment using our navigation tool to the driver so that we guide them.
Yep.
We have the capabilities around what you highlighted for traffic. Some of the things that we just introduced in Copilot last year and what was announced at our conference is weather events for traffic and traffic events as well. The weather events are super important. You and I both know you're from Detroit.
We have weather.
Half an inch of snow doesn't matter. We would get out driving our cars. But the same weather event of half an inch in Atlanta creates havoc in Georgia. All the freight movement through the Atlanta corridor shuts down. So we incorporate that, we bring that, we add that to our mapping data. We add that to our solutions which use the mapping data. That's when we talk about the transformative power of mapping.
Yep. And you kind of alluded to it earlier about the parking. We struggle still to get women into this business because I think a lot of them don't want to be gone overnight. But part of the reason is because they know there's not a lot of safe places to be. A lot of times we're asking drivers to go to sleep in a truck in an area that's not a secured area. It's not a parking lot for trucks. It's not a truck stop. It could be a parking lot. You see them in Walmart. You see them all over. So a lot of people say, I'm not interested in putting myself at risk. A lot of women won't be in this business because why would they? They don't want to be at risk. How are you guys mapping to the parking lots, the safe parking lots?
So I think it is a twofold strategy out here. First is identifying where does parking exist. We are taking GPS positions data to identify. We're working with state agencies. We're working with all the rest stops to get the number of parking spots available, with all the places information where we have geo-fenced the parking locations and the anonymized GPS telemetry data flowing. We know how many trucks are parked at a location, so we can better predict it. Then comes the safety aspect of that location. We're trying to capture the driver feedback, the reviews, so that we offer the choice, whether it's a female driver driving it or anyone who doesn't feel unsafe. There are options today that exist to pay for parking or to reserve a parking spot.
Yeah.
And based on the reviews, we can highlight which are the safe locations. There are some gated parking lots as well. If the individual feels safer in that location, we offer that as an attribute onto the mapping content and inside our solutions.
Yep. Rishi, I'm here in Vegas, which has been great, and the Venetian is a wonderful hotel. I've been a lot of hotels in Vegas. This is one of the nicer ones. I still wake up in the middle of the night because I'm not sleeping in my normal environment. Yes. So if you asked me to sleep in the cab of my truck, I don't own a truck, but if I did, and I was in an area where I didn't know where I was at, I guarantee I would wake up. And we want these drivers to be well rested when their hours are, when they're ready to drive again, because their hours say, I can't have them saying, I heard a lot of crazy stuff out in the parking lot. People were partying or fighting or whatever's going on, whatever woke me up in the middle of the night. Right. So this is a safety issue. Mapping isn't just a nice to have. This is potentially the difference between being safe and not being safe.
Very well put. Totally aligned with that, and that's where the feedback mechanism becomes very important.
Yep.
That's how we rate those locations.
Yep. So we talked about trying to make the driver's life better. You and I had this conversation before we hit record about how we have to make the life of the driver better. We also have to make being a carrier better. We have so many companies right now. We're in a downtime since COVID, and we all just kind of casually talk about, well, we have to lose a certain amount of capacity. A certain amount of armies have to leave the field. Companies have to go out of business. And we say it somewhat casually because it's not our family's business. We have to make the life of an owner and a carrier better. How does this mapping technology make their lives better?
I think the mapping technology helps in multiple ways. Why are carriers and the owners leaving the market? Profitability. Delivering the freight safely, we covered that, how it matters, right? Yeah. We have seen nuclear verdicts come out, but we have covered the safety aspect of it. But profitability becomes important. A carrier's profitability depends on picking up the right load, knowing that they would be able to meet the delivery in full requirements to reach there on time, and then getting the driver onto the next load. So we have built up our places data set and our routing algorithm. So Trimble Places offers over 5 million locations where we have captured dwell and detention times. We can predict if you're picking a load, what would be the turnaround time for your driver. If the driver's sitting there and they run out of hours, they're going to be late to pick up their next load. The amount of miles that would be driven, empty, deadhead miles, are important. They're a loss on the P&L for the carrier. We provide the tools in our mapping platform to be able to benefit and use that technology to make the intelligent decisions so that they can measure the profitability on every load that they pick up.
Yeah, I didn't think of it that way, but it's interesting because this mapping technology, we should also mention PC Miler, since I don't think I've ever seen a logistics contract or transportation contract that didn't have PC Miler, and PC Miler is one of the products that you guys make. Please talk about how PC Miler is one of the foundational products you guys have.
Well, it goes back into the history of ALK, and we'll maybe take a minute to cover that. Over the 39 years, and you saw Michael Kornhauser digitizing PC Miler road network in version 2 day before yesterday, his image of that. But we built the road network, and that is central to us because our focus has been to have the best real-time commercial attribution on our mapping platform. PC Miler uses that to identify the route from point A to point B. It acts as the point of currency between what a shipper is going to pay for a freight movement and the carrier being able to understand what are they going to get paid, and then they adopt the driver pay based on the same per mileage calculation.
Right. Well, I know it is also, without PC Miler, I say, hey, Rishi, would you mind driving this truck from here to here? And you go, okay. And then I go into Google Maps and I go, it looks like Google Maps says it's 342 miles. And then you go, no. PC Miler says it's 348 miles, and you're getting paid by the mile. That matters.
It definitely does.
You need a standard, and by the way, I've said this a few times this week. One of the challenges I think this whole industry has is there's not enough standards. I come from the automotive space. There's 10 major automotive companies. The suppliers, the tier ones, after a while, a lot of them were working with all 10. And they started saying, can we standardize the forms? Yes. And so now you have all of these forms standardized. And it doesn't matter if you're working with Ford or Toyota or Nissan. It's all this BMW. They're all the same. And PC Miler is one of those standards that is starting to make this world more efficient.
Definitely the case, and I think you extend that from PC Miler because PC Miler is the one product which is running in the back office, and when the driver looks at it and they says, okay, PC Miler is going to pay me on 348 miles, what does that mean? How do I follow the PC Miler route? That's where our Copilot navigation solution comes in, because that has all the safety features we talked about, but it follows the PC Miler route. So the drivers know if they follow the route, they're going to get paid accordingly to what the true mileage is, what they're hauling for, and they're going to do it in a safe manner. They don't want to be the one whose picture is taken where they go under a bridge and the top of the trailer. Yes. That is the last thing that they want to get into. So following a commercial navigation solution of Copilot, which is what PC Miler's routing drives, is very important.
Yep. And by the way, I've heard this recently on my podcast. I talked to a carrier not so long ago, and they said to me, we are never the cheapest. No one comes to us because we're cheap. We have new trucks or relatively new trucks. We do excellent scheduled maintenance. We have safety programs, and we have a safety record that we're very proud of. We do the training. We are completely compliant, and we're never the cheapest. And we go, oh, I admire that. And I go, how do you get business? And what he said is, it's a big carrier. And he said, people buy from us because they share our values. They want that same thing. Unfortunately, especially in a down market like we're in, we have a lot of companies, brokers, I'll say, and some shippers who expect a better price. So they say, Joe, I know we've been working together for 20 years, but Rishi here is $30 cheaper, and we've never, he won't talk on the phone, and he has only texts me, and he doesn't have a website, but he's $30 cheaper. And then when they get defrauded, they go, oh my God, how did this happen? And again, I'm victim blaming here a little bit, but we've seen that in the market. So we have, not only do we have cybersecurity concerns, which are the big piece, but we also have freight fraud. Talk about how, not just mapping, but how the whole Trimble ecosystem helps with both freight fraud and the cybersecurity problems.
I think through our connected ecosystem, I'll cover freight fraud first, and we can get into the cybersecurity piece. On freight fraud, we're trying to provide a vetted carrier list. Our carriers who are adopting our enterprise solutions, our TMSs, or our mobility solutions are vetted. They have gone through signing a Trimble contract. We know what they are. If customers come to us, it's almost as a seal that this is
Yes.
a carrier. The same way as you talk about PC Myler being the standard, we want Trimble to be the standard. They're on Trimble technology we can trust. The connections that the Trimble technology offers are the key aspect to feed in the data. You don't have to pick up the phone call. You don't have to see whether they have a website or not. It is the trust that you get from that. But cybersecurity is a very important thing. Unfortunately, the transportation logistics industry is under attack. It's under threat. We have seen that on the surveys that we have done. Almost 65% of the respondents to a recent survey stated that they know of someone who has been through a threat event, or ransomware, or they themselves suffered it.
Yeah.
What was more puzzling is 24 days of outage on such a ransomware at an average. If you think about that, if the truck stops moving for 24 days, freight doesn't move.
Yes.
The downstream cascading effect of that, shelves are not stocked, whether you go to a grocer, whether you go to a retailer to buy something else. All other movement stops. Medical supplies could get impacted. We don't think about those things, and cybersecurity is a very important piece where Trimble has put in a lot of effort into it. Not just in the mapping content itself, because we store a lot of private data from customers. We have to make sure we have the right software development guidelines. Our Trimble software development guidelines incorporates all of those threat detection and intrusion prevention in there. And then we take proactive monitoring on it as well through our own cybersecurity office and our partnership with Microsoft on the Azure ecosystem.
Yep. I was just at one of the payment companies that's out. I think it's one of the fuel card companies. Maybe it's Comdata. And they said, yeah, we help prevent cybersecurity and theft. And he said, usually if you have a fuel card and you're a driver, you have a big tab.
Yes.
And he said, well, we partner with Trimble, and they'll tell you that we know where that truck is, we know where that driver is, and if the driver in the truck is in Iowa and the charge is in California, you stop it right then.
Couldn't have been a better example of how mapping data comes into play. We have geofenced all the locations for the fueling providers, and you can find out if the GPS position is in that fueling bay or not.
Yep.
And if the driver is there at the same time, that's what helps prevent the threat.
Yep. And I asked this question, I know it's probably an unfair question, but I'll ask it anyway. We are in a business where was 30,000 brokers, now there's 27,000 brokers, and many of them, 25,000 are smaller. Then we have, millions of carriers, a lot of them are smaller. Yet we know we have to get to the next level in cybersecurity. We have to be secure because you said it, we're under attack. I won't mention the names, but we know major carriers who've made the investments have gone and been hacked, and they get cybersecurity, what do they call it, ransomware. But we also know AT&T got hacked.
Yes.
They're a technology company, very well respected. We saw that problem with the airlines and Microsoft. Again, these companies have spent a ton of money on making sure their systems stay up. We have not spent that money across all of our small carriers. How do we upgrade the whole industry? And this is my hypothesis, I don't think the small guys can do it. I kind of think that they have to be told, you have to come to this standard. And it's Trimble is probably the standard.
Yes, so and we don't want to come down the regulation path in there.
No.
But transportation is the lifeline of the economy. And it could be a combination of regulation, but it's our job as a technology provider to keep the carriers operating in a safe environment at a low cost. We don't want cybersecurity to be an extra burden on top of their profitability. No. We spoke about carriers being profitable and the freight economy. We want to be at an affordable cost. That's where the industry needs to come together, partner with Trimble, partner with Microsoft to get it into the right place.
Yep. And I think we could have a digital 9/11, a cyber 9/11, and the day after, the Fortune 5,000 are going to say, here's the new standard. And the nice thing, if you're using Trimble, is you already met that standard. And you don't want to be scrambling on the day after this catastrophe when somebody says, hey, effective immediately, this large shipper no longer will work with a company that doesn't do blank, blank, and blank.
Yes. It's good to have that stamp of approval and the recognition for Trimble in that. That's what we strive to be. We want to offer that as an inbuilt capability. When you're trusting Trimble and being on our cloud ecosystem, we are ensuring that you're safe.
Yep. So I want to wrap this up. I want to put a big old bow on this, but I want to talk to you about, we talked about these four pillars: growth, compliance, efficiency, and safety. And we touched on it a little bit throughout our conversation. Please give us some final thoughts and include that in, if you don't mind. I know you have to go. You have to go be a vice president.
Thank you for that. I'll cover it from both angles. I'll cover it from Trimble's transportation perspective of growth, compliance, efficiency, and safety, and then also give you the mapping angle on it because it's interconnected.
Yep.
Right? We covered the divisions in Trimble, but more around divisions, it's the technology offerings that we have, our solutions that we do. That is where we talk about bringing growth. When we talk about carriers picking the right freight, having the visibility into where their trucks are, knowing are they going to deliver to the shippers on time. So our transport and integration brings a lot of growth opportunities for the carriers who are on the ecosystem. Our connection to our other partners brings in freight, which they can analyze and say, is this the right freight for me to pick? How do I grow? How do I grow my network? Those are our growth products. From a compliance perspective, we've talked about whether cyber compliance, but when Trimble speaks this week around compliance, it is more being compliant with the regulations of safety, regulations of ELD, regulations of inspections of the vehicles. That is a very important piece. How many times do we hear the tractor or the trailer was not inspected, which resulted in an accident? And that accident takes carriers out of business. Unfortunately, that is the reality of the world we live in. The nuclear verdicts that get handed down are very detrimental to the economy, to the freight economy, to the carrier market. So we are providing products in there. Our new DVIR solution is one of that, which is again connected to all the other
what
pieces.
Was it? You snuck an acronym in there. What was it?
Digital vehicle inspection,
Okay.
the DVIR piece.
Yeah, and that also prevents unscheduled maintenance.
Yes, we are looking at trying to find out and identify what maintenance was not done and which alerts need to be raised by connecting it to our TMT fleet maintenance solution and others in the market. And then efficiency is you get to those breakdowns. No one wants breakdowns. People want to know from a Trimble perspective, how do I stay ahead? How do I get my preventative maintenance done? But in the unfortunate event that there is a breakdown, how do I use the new road call module to best get the truck repaired, towed, fixed, and out moving? That's the biggest investment that a carrier has. The investment they put into leasing or buying a truck and the driver that they have to pay are important pieces.
That truck is the ultimate technology. We don't talk about it enough.
No.
We have tons of tech companies here, but let's face it, the technology we all ride around in is the truck.
Yes.
And it's very expensive.
It sure is. And then you get to the safety aspect. Right? Safe. We covered driver being safe. That is the most important thing. Delivering of that freight safely in a timely manner. And that's where we announced the Copilot V11 solution, which has a really new modernized UI. You and I spoke about our children and grandchildren being in trucking. They're using applications which have UI which they relate to. If you show that same application to the current truck driver who might be in their late 40s, 50s, they do not relate to that.
Right.
But our children or grandchildren are the ones, not at that stage yet, but they would be the ones who want to select application. That's what Copilot's bringing. It's the V11 bringing a new modernized UI, adding the parking capabilities that we covered on. What is the safe parking? Where can I find the predicted parking? And then introducing our traffic slowdown, our safety alerts to keep the driver safe and moving at all times.
I love it. I love it. What I'll do is I'll make sure I put a link to your LinkedIn profile, link to the website, and any of the links Brittany gives me, I'll put in the show notes. And thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're busy seeing all your partners here this week.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to always share where Trimble's headed, how mapping can make an impact, and keep the freight moving.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, sir.
And thank all of you for listening to my podcast. Your support's very much appreciated. Until next time, onward and upward. You have been listening to the Logistics of Logistics podcast, where we engage with leaders in the logistics and supply chain community. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, hit the like button, and leave us a nice review on Apple or Spotify or wherever else you listen. Also, please check out our videos on YouTube and connect with us on LinkedIn. We're very big on LinkedIn. And you can also reach us on the logisticsoflogistics.com, our website.